So before we go into this anymore, I want to talk a little bit about grounding. So what we did here was you could see that we had this metal sphere was polarized, and there's a wire being connected from this end to the ground, which means the earth. This is a little symbol for connecting it to the ground, to earth. And what you see is all those negative charges disappeared. They just kind of went down to ground. And so this concept of grounding basically makes charges disappear. That's the easy way to look at it. If I were to have touched the grounding wire here, all the negative charges disappear. If I were to have not touched it here, but connected it over here, all the positive charges would disappear. So again, connecting it to the left-hand side would have made, to the right-hand side would make all of these charges disappear, the negative charges. If I had connected it there, it would make the positive charges disappear. So the act of grounding, you could think of it simply as it makes any excess charges that are there disappear. And these guys don't go anywhere because they've got these guys, they want to be close to them. But these guys had nothing to be close to. So again, they disappeared. Now, what is happening when I say they disappeared? They're not really disappearing. What happens here is when you connect this to the ground, the electrons don't want to be near each other. They say, hey, lots of extra space out here, lots of positive guys over here. Let's head out. And they all just go away. There's no reason for any of them to be here because there's far more less electrons here. They want to get away from each other as much as possible. And so that's what happens. Had I connected it to the other side, remember the positive charges don't move, so they don't go anywhere. Negative charges from the Earth say, hey, look, lots of positive guys over there. Let's go hang out with them. And they zoom up here and they come around these guys. And of course, when negative and positive charges are near each other, the whole area becomes neutral because they cancel each other out. And so basically what's happening is these atoms of here that were stripped of their electrons now getting electrons back, and they're becoming neutral again. From ions, they're becoming back into neutral atoms. So that's the act of grounding, okay? Is basically electrons racing to the Earth or racing up from the Earth to, make the electrons spread out so they get away from each other. And again, that's all coming from like charges repel. Positive charges repel too, but they just don't have any way to go. They're tied to their bonds, to their neighbors, to the solid or the liquid or the gas that they're tied to. They're not the guys they're going to be moving. So if I were to ground this here, now you see that once those electrons leave this, and I take this wire away, like I did here, and then I move this guy away. When I move this guy away, the electrons redistribute themselves because now they can get away. There's no reason for them to be wanting to get away from these guys. So they kind of redistribute themselves like we see in a conductor. We see that the charges get away as far away from each other as possible. So they spread out. And now what we see is where we have a positively charged conductor. So we just charged this guy. He was, notice, neutral, brought him close, polarized him, kind of tricked him into getting polarized, and then grounded one side so he'd lost his electrons, and then moved that guy away. And now we're left with a charged conductor. So here's a way that you can charge an object by induction. This is called induction, where I didn't really touch them. No charges came from my negative rod. My rod is still negative like it was before. It didn't lose anything. It didn't touch anything. But this was a way that I could, by shorting it or by grounding it, cause those electrons to move in or out and change the polarity of this. Had I brought a positive rod in, I would have had negative charges here, positive charges there. I would have grounded it. Negative charges would run up. I would have been left with a whole bunch of negative charges in here because that would be these guys would have been left over. They'd been negative if had this been positive. And so we see then we would have been left with a negatively charged conductor had we brought in a positively charged